The pristine lawns and picket fences of Oak Ridge Estates concealed a web of secrets that was about to unravel. Behind the facade of one particular house, number 42 Maple Street, Sarah Lawson stood at her kitchen window, a cup of coffee growing cold in her hands as she stared unseeing at the perfect rows of hydrangeas in her backyard. At 45, Sarah had everything society told her she should want: a successful husband, a beautiful home, and a comfortable life. Yet the hollowness inside her grew with each passing day. Little did Sarah know, her carefully constructed world was about to implode. The arrival of her new neighbors, the Reeds, would set in motion a chain of events that would expose the cracks in her perfect life and lead to a tragedy that would shake the foundations of Oak Ridge Estates. As Sarah watched the moving truck pull up to the house next door, she had no idea that she was about to meet the person who would both awaken her deepest desires and ultimately lead to her downfall. The Reeds arrived on a sunny Saturday morning in June. Sarah, ever the perfect neighbor, had baked a batch of her famous blueberry muffins to welcome them. As she walked across her manicured lawn to greet the newcomers, she noticed a young woman directing the movers. "Hello there," Sarah called out, plastering on her best welcoming smile. "I'm Sarah Lawson. Welcome to the neighborhood." The young woman turned, and Sarah felt her breath catch in her throat. With long chestnut hair, piercing green eyes, and a smile that could light up the darkest room, Lily Reed was stunning. "Hi, I'm Lily," she replied, her voice warm and inviting. "It's so nice to meet you, Sarah. And are those muffins? You're already my favorite neighbor." As they chatted, Sarah learned that Lily was 28 and had just moved to Oak Ridge with her husband, Mark, who was still at work. Lily was an artist, working from home, while Mark was a software engineer. Over the next few weeks, Sarah found herself drawn more and more to Lily. They would chat over the fence, sharing coffee on lazy afternoons. Lily's free spirit and zest for life were infectious, awakening something in Sarah that had long been dormant. One evening, as Sarah prepared dinner for her husband Tom, she realized she had spent more time thinking about Lily than anything else that day. The realization unsettled her, but she pushed the thought aside, focusing instead on the sound of Tom's car pulling into the driveway. Tom entered the kitchen, his attention immediately going to his phone. "Hey, honey," he said absently, not even looking up. "Smells good." Sarah felt a familiar pang of loneliness. When was the last time Tom had really looked at her? Really seen her? She shook off the feeling and turned back to the stove, unaware that her world was about to change forever. As summer progressed, Sarah found herself spending more and more time with Lily. They would go for walks in the nearby park, have lunch at the local cafe, or simply sit in Lily's studio watching her paint. Sarah was fascinated by Lily's artistic process, the way she could transform a blank canvas into a vibrant world of color and emotion. One afternoon, as they sat in Lily's studio, Sarah found herself opening up about her marriage. "Tom and we've been together for so long," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sometimes I wonder if we even know each other anymore." Lily listened intently, her green eyes filled with compassion. "Have you talked to him about how you feel?" she asked gently. Sarah shook her head. "I wouldn't know where to start. It's like we're just going through the motions, you know? Work, dinner, TV, sleep, rinse and repeat." Lily reached out and took Sarah's hand. The touch sent a jolt through Sarah's body, awakening feelings she had long forgotten. "You deserve to be happy, Sarah," Lily said softly. "Life's too short to just go through the motions." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world seemed to stand still. Sarah felt her heart racing, her breath catching in her throat. Without thinking, she leaned forward, her lips meeting Lily's in a soft, tentative kiss. For a split second, everything felt right. Then reality came crashing down. Sarah pulled away abruptly, her mind reeling. I'm sorry, she stammered, grabbing her purse and rushing out of the studio. As she ran home, her thoughts were a jumble of confusion and guilt. What had she done? How could she face Tom? And more importantly, how could she face Lily again? Little did Sarah know, this moment of weakness would set in motion a series of events that would lead to devastating consequences. Despite her best efforts to avoid Lily, Sarah found herself drawn back to her neighbor time and time again. Their stolen moments became more frequent, more passionate. What started as innocent friendship blossomed into a full-blown affair. Sarah felt alive for the first time in years. The guilt was still there, gnawing at the edges of her consciousness, but it was overshadowed by the thrill of newfound passion. Lily made her feel seen, understood, desired in a way Tom hadn't in years, but as with all secrets, theirs couldn't stay hidden forever. Mark Reed, Lily's husband, began to grow suspicious of his wife's frequent art sessions with Sarah. He started asking questions, showing up unexpectedly at home. One fateful afternoon, Mark came home early to find Sarah and Lily in a compromising position in the studio. The confrontation that followed was explosive. Mark, enraged and betrayed, threatened to expose their affair to the entire neighborhood, including Tom. Sarah fled the Reed house in panic, her mind racing. She couldn't let Tom find out this way. She had to tell him herself, but the thought of confessing filled her with dread. How could she explain something she barely understood herself? As she paced her living room, trying to gather the courage to face her husband, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Lily. "We need to talk. Meet me at Oak Ridge Park tonight at 9. Please." Sarah stared at the message, her heart pounding. She knew she should end things with Lily, focus on salvaging her marriage. But the thought of never seeing Lily again was unbearable. With shaking hands, she typed out a reply, "I'll be there." As darkness fell over Oak Ridge Estates, Sarah slipped out of her house, unaware that she was walking towards a confrontation that would change everything. Oak Ridge Park was eerily quiet as Sarah made her way along the moonlit path. Her heart raced with a mixture of anticipation and dread. As she approached their usual meeting spot by the old oak tree, she saw Lily's silhouette in the darkness. "Lily?" Sarah called out softly, but as she drew closer, she realized it wasn't Lily waiting for her. It was Mark. "Hello, Sarah." Mark's voice was cold, barely containing his anger. "Surprised to see me?" Sarah froze, her blood turning to ice. "Mark, Where's Lily?" "Oh, she's at home, probably wondering where her phone is," Mark replied, holding up Lily's phone. "I thought it was time you and I had a little chat." Sarah took a step back, suddenly very aware of how isolated they were. "Mark, please, let's not do this here." "Where should we do it then, Sarah?" Mark's voice rose. "In your bedroom? Or maybe in my studio, where you've been screwing my wife?" "It's not like that," Sarah pleaded. "We never meant to hurt anyone." Mark laughed bitterly. "Hurt anyone? You've destroyed everything. My marriage, your marriage. Did you think there wouldn't be consequences?" He stepped closer, his face contorted with rage. Sarah stumbled backward, tripping over a tree root and falling hard on the ground. As Mark loomed over her, Sarah felt a surge of panic. She scrambled to her feet and ran, her heart pounding in her ears. She could hear Mark's footsteps behind her getting closer. In her panic, she veered off the path, plunging into the wooded area of the park. Branches whipped at her face as she ran blindly through the darkness. Suddenly, her foot caught on something, and she was falling. There was a sickening crack as her head struck something hard, and then everything went black. Detective Laura Chen stood at the edge of the crime scene, her eyes scanning the area where Sarah Lawson's body had been found. The morning sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. "What have we got?" she asked her partner, Detective Mike Ramirez. "Sarah Lawson, 45, found by a jogger early this morning. Blunt force trauma to the head," Ramirez replied, flipping through his notebook. "No signs of robbery. Her purse and jewelry were still on her." Chen frowned. "What was she doing out here in the middle of the night?" "That's the million-dollar question," Ramirez said. "Husband says she went for a walk after dinner and never came back. But get this, the neighbor, Mark Reed, is also missing. His wife reported him gone around the same time." Chen's eyebrows shot up. "Interesting coincidence. Let's talk to the husband and Mrs. Reed." As they made their way back to Maple Street, Chen couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a tangled web of suburban secrets. Little did she know, unraveling this case would expose a scandal that would rock Oak Ridge Estates to its core. Tom Lawson sat in his living room, his face a mask of shock and grief. "I don't understand," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why would Sarah be in the park at night? It doesn't make any sense." Chen studied him carefully. "Mr. Lawson, was there anything unusual about Sarah's behavior lately? Any changes in routine, new friends, anything out of the ordinary?" Tom shook his head, then paused. "Well, she had been spending a lot of time with our new neighbor, Lily Reed. They became fast friends when the Reeds moved in a few months ago." Chen and Ramirez exchanged a glance. "And Mr. Reed? Did Sarah spend much time with him?" "Mark? No, not really," Tom replied. "He works long hours. I barely see him myself." As they left the Lawson house, Chen's mind was buzzing with possibilities. "Let's go talk to Mrs. Reed," she said to Ramirez. "I have a feeling she might be able to fill in some blanks." Lily Reed was a mess when they arrived. Her eyes were red and puffy, her hands shaking as she ushered them in. "I don't know where Mark is," she said before they could even ask. "We had an argument last night, and he stormed out. I thought he'd come back, but—" "Mrs. Reed," Chen began gently, "we need to ask you about your relationship with Sarah Lawson." Lily's face paled. "Sarah? What about her?" "She was found dead in Oak Ridge Park this morning," Ramirez said bluntly. Lily's legs gave out and she collapsed onto the sofa. "No," she whispered. "No, it can't be." As Chen watched Lily's reaction, she knew they had just scratched the surface of a much bigger story. The truth about what happened to Sarah Lawson was hidden in the secrets and lies of Oak Ridge Estates, and she was determined to uncover it, no matter the cost. Over the next few days, Detective Chen and her team dug deeper into the lives of the Lawsons and the Reeds. They uncovered a trail of secret messages, hidden rendezvous, and a web of lies that had entangled both couples. Interviews with neighbors revealed whispers of an affair between Sarah and Lily. Bank records showed large withdrawals from Mark Reed's account in the days leading up to Sarah's death, and Tom Lawson's alibi for the night of the murder was shaky at best. But the breakthrough came when they found Mark Reed's car abandoned near the state border. Inside, they discovered a hastily packed bag and a letter, a confession that would blow the case wide open. In the letter, Mark detailed his discovery of the affair between Sarah and Lily. He wrote of his confrontation with Sarah in the park, of his rage and his shame. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. "I didn't mean to hurt her," Mark had written. "I just wanted to scare her, to make her feel as scared and lost as I did. But when she fell, God help me, I panicked, I ran, and now I can never take it back." As Chen read the letter aloud to her team, a hush fell over the room. They had their killer, but the tragedy of the situation was not lost on any of them. Arrest warrants were issued for Mark Reed, and an all-points bulletin was put out. But deep down, Chen knew that Mark was long gone, driven by guilt and fear to a destination unknown. In the months that followed, Oak Ridge Estates would never be the same. The scandal rocked the community, shattering the illusion of suburban perfection they had all clung to so desperately. Lily Reed, devastated by the loss of both her lover and her husband, sold the house and moved away, unable to bear the whispers and pointed fingers of her neighbors. Tom Lawson, left to grapple with the betrayal of his wife and the circumstances of her death, became a shell of his former self. The once pristine house at 42 Maple Street fell into disrepair, a physical manifestation of the broken life within. And somewhere out there, Mark Reed remained at large, haunted by his actions and the lives he had destroyed in a moment of blind rage. Detective Laura Chen, standing outside the Oak Ridge Estates gates one last time, couldn't help but reflect on the case that had consumed her for months. The perfectly manicured lawns and immaculate houses no longer looked the same to her. Now she saw them for what they truly were, facades hiding the messy, complicated realities of human nature. As she drove away, leaving Oak Ridge Estates in her rearview mirror, Chen knew that the lessons learned from Sarah Lawson's tragic story would stay with her forever. In the end, it wasn't just about solving a murder. It was about understanding the depths of human emotion, the devastating consequences of secrets and lies, and the fragile nature of the lives we build for ourselves. The case of Sarah Lawson was closed, but its impact would ripple through the lives of all involved for years to come. In Oak Ridge Estates, behind every perfect lawn and picket fence, people would always wonder, what secrets lie behind closed doors?